Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. We have got an extraordinarily good show for you today. I know. I say that all the time. But in this case, we're going to talk to somebody that has created something over the last 10 years that is new and different and can be very, very helpful. If, as an example, now I live in Seattle, which has over 500,000 people, or if you live in LA, or if you live in New York or Houston, I'd move from Houston if I were you. Anyway, if you were any of these places, and you want to have a different type of life, you want a little bit slower of a life, you want to figure out how your business can flourish, how your family can flourish, what the education is like, all of those things that go into picking a spot and moving it. We've got a great guest for you today, and they've got a great website. It's called livability.com, and you'll be able to go there and you can find out all of these things about a drum roll, please. I wish I had a drum roll, but I don't have a drum roll. But the 100 best places to live in the United States. And they've done a tremendous amount of research over the last 10 years. And Amanda Ellis is, I think you're the head bottle washer and CEO and creator and all of that stuff of this program. Amanda, welcome to the show. How the heck are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited. That was quite the intro.
Well, and you are quite the lady, and you have got quite the program, because everybody, when people look and say, I don't want to live here anymore. As an example, if you go downtown Seattle, there are places in downtown Seattle, even though I love my city, that you may not want to go to or be part of because of the homelessness and that kind of stuff. You can go to livability.com and you can look at a lot of different places. Now, you've been doing this for 10 years, Amanda. What got you started in creating this website and this whole program?
Sure. So Livability, I've actually only run Livability for about 3 years, but we've been doing our top 100 best places to live for 10, and our digital presence has been around for a little bit longer than that. But I've been engaged in, helping communities promote themselves for pretty much my whole career. I worked for a chamber of commerce prior to coming over to Livability. And a goal now for a lot of chambers is that kind of community marketing piece. But that all being said, yes, Livability is all about small to mid-sized cities, helping them promote themselves and helping relocators, talent, people, looking for that next great place to kind of have all the resources they need at their fingertips to get a sense of a lot of really good places across our giant country.
We have a ton of really cool places to live um, throughout the country, and I would really love to be able to live in a little bit smaller of a community, because Seattle in and of itself is a town of like 700,000, but because of the suburbs that we have surrounding them, and like Bellevue is the fourth largest city, and Tacoma's 25 miles away, and that's the second largest city in the state and stuff. And so it's almost like we are going from strip mall to strip mall throughout the entire area, and some people would like to have a little bit different style of life, and and you help them with that, as well as the real estate costs and the education. You guys do a lot of thorough research. How much work do you put into each city and in your rankings to make sure that the top 100 are represented?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And you made a great point on sort of the push and pull we're always seeing between the practical factors people have to look at and like the more fun quality of life pieces, right? Definitely got to balance those. But for our top 100, it is an extensive data driven process. So we pull around 100 data points on all the cities that fit our population range. So we focus on small to medium sized cities. And so the population we use is 75,000 to 500,000 to hit some of those small to medium sized places. So we pull all this data on all the places that fit our population constraints, divide those data points into 8 different categories. And that's where that balance comes in of those practical factors versus quality of life. So we kind of have all those categories, baked out to think about what are all the things you would think about with whether a place is good to live or not. So everything from, health to environment to, housing and cost of living, the local economy. And then all that data gets plugged into a big algorithm that weights all those categories equally against each other, spits out what we call our live score, and then essentially the highest 100 live scores make up our list with some constraints involved in terms of, you want to have some solid state and regional diversity there. So sometimes we make some editorial decisions about if every suburb of a certain place ranks really highly and we don't want a quarter of the list to be, suburbs of Dallas or Houston, for example, because a lot of those score really well. So some editorializing involved with that, but that's sort of how our process works.
Well, and one of the things in our country, so sadly right now, that safety is a big issue. And you want to move, especially if you've got kids, you want to live in a place that's got great education but also safety is a major component. How do you tabulate your safety statistics to see who is a safer community to live?
Yeah, safety is something a lot of people think about, right? So the data that goes into that category is based on it's the most depressing category of all of them. It's not the most fun one, but it's the incidence of different crimes in that community. That's sort of what goes into that category and sort of how we come up with that score. I will say when you look at the scoring across the board for all of our cities in different categories, if there was one that I had to say consistently communities just score a little bit lower in, that would be the one, which is interesting when you think about even these places, they're the very, very best according to the methodology we're using. That's sort of the category that I feel like lags a little bit, but that's sort of how we calculate it and look at that. But it is something that people are thinking about.
Well, and I'm willing to bet, and I haven't looked specifically at Boulder, Colorado, but I'm willing to bet that if they're not on the list, they're close to being on the list. And even they recently had a horrific incident that happened. So while it would be nice to be able to say, yes, I can tell you that this community is absolutely 100% safe, it's not possible.
Yeah, it doesn't really exist. And context is so important with some of those safety concerns too. What sorts of crimes is it that you're seeing? Where are they? And a lot of times the thing with a lot of crime is it may not be like a random bystander, right? Maybe things that as long as you kind of, mind your own business, you'll be fine. But yeah, there's definitely no community that's free of, chance of anything bad happening. I wish there were.
Well, that would be kind of utopia, but we're working for that because eventually we need, I would love for everybody to live in a safe place where they can raise their kids. They can go to get a good education. The economy is good so that they can work. The amenities are good. So if they want to go out to a real nice dinner, that's available to them and all that kind of stuff. And in the work that you do, have you found that all of those things play really into when people are looking to relocate and especially the economy? Can they get a job once they get there?
Yep. It all goes back to what we just covered, that push and pull of the practical factors and the quality of life factors, because they're both really important, right? We have done some of our own research looking at what some of those, top relocation considerations are for people. And some of the ones that have come up the highest when people are looking at a place and, asking, hey, would this be a good fit for me? You pretty much hit the nail on the head. Affordability and cost of living is a big one. What is like the climate and weather like is another big one. Proximity to family is a big one too, that people are looking at, like your loved ones, your support network. What does that look like? And, other practical things like how much living space can you get for your money? And, we've got a lot of housing issues and things going on with that across the country. And it's, something, a big one people are thinking about. So
It's amazing. Well, and looking at the website, you've got it by region, by population, by home values. So if somebody needs to, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but housing values change from community to community, state to state, based on a whole bunch of different factors. And like as an example, in Seattle, the average house is like $850 or $900,000. Well, I don't know about you, but that I can't afford to live there because so if you're looking for a house and a community, all of these things come in. Do you find that you get a lot of response from people that say, "Thank God you're here"?
well, we like to think so. But yeah, those filters are really helpful to be able to think about what's most important to me. And that's sort of how we've really tried to structure this list. So we actually used to really emphasize more of a ranking component of this, where we'd actually say, like, this was the number 1 city, this was the number 5 city, all the way up to 100. And we've moved away from that a little bit, and instead looking at it more like these are the 100 best places according to the methodology we use, and then offering these other criteria people can filter by to give it more of a personalized feel based on what's more important to them. So, for one person, that might be amenities. For another person, it might be, that housing piece, or what's the median home value. And I'll add one other fun fact too on the median home value front. So we also really try to incorporate affordability into this list. It's something that's always been important, but I think in the last several years, a lot of the things we've been seeing even more important to a lot of us. So we only consider cities with a median home value under $500,000. So that's sort of an additional criteria that we add on once we've gotten those top live scores and filtered out even a little further by what places are looking more affordable from that standpoint.
Which can be really, really helpful for folks, because even and I want to throw this out there because I think this also plays into it. You're working in San Francisco, and you're an IT guy, and you get a call from another state, from another company that says, "We love your work and we really want you to come here." This is a great place to start to determine whether or not the overall livability of a place, which is, by the way, the name of your website, which is livability.com. It really is helpful to be able to go there to see what is it in the top 100, and if it is in the top 100, what is the education like, what is the economy like, and all of those things, so that you can help make an informed decision. Even if somebody's offered you a job in a particular community, you don't know what it's going to be like when you get there. And if it's not in the top 100, I would suggest that you maybe reconsider going there. What do you think?
I don't know about that. So the number of cities in the country, I mentioned our population range we look at 75,000 to 500,000. So there's about a little over 2,000 cities that would fit our population criteria to be considered. So there are still some places outside of that that could be good ones. But I do think this is a good place to start. And I think what you're saying is so true, in that most people, even if it's a great job opportunity, they definitely want to look at, well, am I going to be able to have a good life in this community before I jump on this, right? And moving is a pain. Nobody, the actual work of moving, nobody really enjoys that, kind of moving your whole life, finding another like place to physically live, all of that. So yeah, I think people are thinking through making it worth it and trying to make decisions around somewhere that they'll be happy for a while.
Yeah. Well, and I got to tell you, I absolutely hate moving. As a matter of fact, I moved here 5 years ago and I still have got boxes I haven't unpacked. I don't know if that's normal, but it may be.
You got to work on that.
Yeah, you're right. Because it's like, oh, I didn't know I had that. That's pretty cool. Because it's been in a box for 5 years. So
or you rebuy things and then you're like, wait, I already have
I already had that.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that. Or I'm so lame. I have to tell you just real quick, and then we have to take a break. But my son came here because I had pictures and stuff that had been over on my other house, actually on the walls. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but pictures and murals and all that kind of stuff. Well, he put them on my walls because I never have. So my walls were they're bare and vacant, and now it looks a little bit homier. So that's how lame I am. But in any event, by the way, we're talking with Amanda Ellis. Go to livability.com to find out more about them and the top 100 houses or the top 100 communities to live in. And by the way, if you're a real estate agent and you're part of one of these 100, I would go there if you were a real estate agent, but you need somebody to help you sometimes. And this guy has got a whole program, and he can help you become a real estate agent. And or if you are a real estate agent and you don't have any listings and you can't find any listings and nobody wants to buy a house from you or sell a house with you, then this is the guy to go, and he can help you. So listen to this.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, everybody. And we've got a great guest for you today. Her name is Amanda Ellis, and she operates the website with a team. Doesn't do this by herself because there's so much to do with it. But livability.com, you can go there, and if you want to find the best house in the region you're thinking about moving into, and if you have a question, you're certainly welcome to put it into the chat, and I might even be able to use the website and find the right place for you, or at least a reasonable place for you to move if you wanted to do that. And so Amanda, it is let's see, communicating. Oh, okay. It is really fun to have you here, and I know you work with a lot of Chamber of Commerce's, and you have people that are trying to get the word out about their communities and stuff. Are there any one chamber or group of chambers that are more successful at getting the word out about who they are than others are?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always probably true. Yeah. So at Livability, we also work with chambers of commerce and economic development organizations. So groups that are interested in getting out information and marketing their communities to talent, right? Because that all goes back to communities wanting to have the right workforce in place. You know, you want to be a place where people are wanting to come and be, not a place where people are leaving. And so this idea of talent attraction has become a big piece of people that work in economic and community development, right? And you can understand what that might look like. So part of what we do is help communities with that. So using our platforms like livability.com to help these communities, these small and mid-sized places that have a lot to offer but aren't always the most top of mind, depending on where you're at in the country, and helping them get the word out.
Now, there have to be somewhere in the United States what I would term, well, actually, what you would term a gem community, one that doesn't get the publicity, that doesn't get them. They may not have the funds to be able to market themselves, but they're a really cool place to be. I found Boulder to be such a place, but I used to travel for a living, but most of that was into metropolitan areas. Are there hidden gem communities that kind of meet all the criteria, but nobody has ever heard of them?
Well, I don't know that nobody's ever heard. I think a lot of these communities we look at, they're big enough that there's at least some recognition, name recognition with some of them. But I'll call out a few. So we always have a lot of suburbs of Dallas and of Houston that score really well. So like Flower Mound, Texas was one that did really well this year. Carmel, Indiana, right outside of Indianapolis. Roswell, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. Just kind of throwing a few out that have ranked highly this year. But yeah, it always is fun to look at the list and think about, places you've been and that really made a good impression on you. I know Cincinnati is one of our cities that has appeared on the list for a while, and I got to visit there a couple of years ago, and really cool place that's, I don't know, just had a lot of unexpectedly solid art scene, like a lot to do, lots of public art, just a really cool place. And actually my own city, so I'm based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my city, we actually made the list this year as well. And we have made it before, but not since I've been on the team. And no, I did not cheat it at all, but it was definitely cool to see your own place show up objectively.
Now, I've got to ask you, as far as the safety component goes, do you have a snake and a reptile barometer of different cities? Because that would be a major component of, as an example, if you want me to move to Florida, you're going to have to find me a place where alligators don't come and boa constrictors aren't there and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no, but I'm with you. Being able to insulate from those things would be really cool, especially in a place like that.
I interviewed somebody a couple of weeks ago, and she was in Florida, and excuse me, and I said, "So, do you ever see any alligators?" And she said, "Yeah, we've got one in the backyard." What? And but that's part of the country, and that's where we all are. But so I'm looking at your list, and one of them that you mentioned was Carmel, Indiana. I've heard of Carmel, California, but I've never heard of Carmel, Indiana. But it's got a live score of 875, which I'm guessing is very high. Why would it be ranked so high?
So typically what we're seeing, and I will add too, I know I mentioned that we don't promote this as a ranking as much these days, more as a collection of really awesome places. But when you get to our top 100 landing page, the way that it's laid out is in order of live score. So technically, if you want to look at it that way, then you could say that Carmel, Indiana scored the second highest of any community. And what I'll say about that is, I know I talked a little bit about our data categories, how we divide up all of those data points, weight them equally against each other. So the cities that score the highest are typically going to be the ones that did the best pretty across the board. So they performed pretty well comparative to other places in pretty much all of the categories. So these top 5, top 10 definitely are doing pretty well on everything that we look at.
And by the way, in looking at the Northwest, Beaverton, which is in the top, and that is I love Beaverton. It's a great place.
Yeah, I know it's always cool to get ideas for places you could visit. I know that for me, like where I'm based in the Southeast, Livability is based near Nashville, and so I always have a little bit more familiarity personally with some of the places kind of on our side of the country, and this always gives some cool ideas for places, in other regions that maybe you don't know a lot about, which is what I think is so cool for relocators, because I think a lot of people have that experience. We're such a huge country that, you're probably pretty familiar with even the smaller and mid-sized places around you, but places in totally other regions where you haven't spent as much time, there definitely might be some names on here that you haven't heard of.
Oh, exactly. So let me ask you, we are a country that moves around, I think, a lot. Do we move around as much as I think we do, and check out new places and new ideas, and because they get tired of living where they were and they want to go someplace else. Is that kind of a thing?
So yes and no. It's kind of a long answer. I'll talk you through it a little bit, but it changes depending on like other factors that are going on, right? So like we all know that there was a little bit of a spike in some of those relocations and moving decisions. For example, during the pandemic when remote work was really at its peak, right? And some people made those decisions to maybe, move from a really expensive metro to more of a mid-sized city, or move back closer to family and take the opportunity to make those changes. But actually, there's a new, and I'll have to credit him when I say this, but there's a new book out, and it's by an editor at The Atlantic. It's called Stuck. I believe his name is Yoni Applebaum, I think. And he talks about how ultimately we've actually really decreased our big relocation type moves kind of slowly over the last several decades. He talks about how something that's really unique about the US is that we're such a big country that there's a lot of potential to be able to move around within the same country in a way that, not everywhere in the world has, if you think about, places where the countries are a lot smaller. And that we've reduced moving around, and he largely attributes that to housing costs and some of the housing issues that we're facing right now. And I do think some of that is probably impacting, relocation and seeing people make those decisions when you think about affordability and availability issues we're seeing across the country in terms of housing, to where making a big relocation decision might be a big economic hit to a lot of people or a lot of families, right? To make that change. So long answer to your question of what some of those trends are looking like, but I would say yes and no in terms of people moving around a lot and being open to that.
Do you find that in talking with people and Chamber of Commerce and stuff, that working from home, because during the pandemic it was a big thing. Now there's some companies that are saying, oh no, you need to come into work and we need to do this, but a lot of companies have said, you know what? We're finding that the productivity from somebody working at home is just as good, if not better, and they can take care of their kids, and there's a whole bunch of good reasons for it. Are you finding that working out of the home is becoming a bigger deal, or at least isn't declining like they thought it would at post pandemic?
It's really interesting. We are a remote first team, so this is my apartment behind me.
Yeah.
But okay, so here's kind of where that's landed. So the biggest uptick that has been seen in terms of remote work is really hybrid work has kind of been the key takeaway from that time, as far as a lot more openness to people doing some of both, right? So maybe they don't exclusively work from home, or they can't, live in another city from where their work is, but they're able to maybe do half and half in a given week, or depending on kind of what they have going on. And a lot more openness and receptiveness to that seems to be the biggest takeaway from the data that I've seen. And fully remote work has seen an uptick to where it was before COVID, but it hasn't been sort of the complete game changer that I think some of us thought it might be when we first entered that time period and everyone was doing that.
Well, it's interesting because I talk to people all over the world, and I talk to them on StreamYard, which is this platform, and it's really interesting how many people are working from home and building a career out of where they live. I mean, as an example, for 6 years, the Western headquarters for Simmons Foods was the fourth bedroom of my house. Because they're out of Arkansas and I didn't go there very much. And I worked out of Seattle. And so a lot of people are doing that more and more so. But even when they do that, it's the place where they live and the education their kids get and the opportunities. Those are still major impact and major focuses on people's decisions to move from place to place, aren't they?
Yeah, all of those things do play into it. Yeah.
Because it really is important for you. There was a time years ago when I was young, which was years ago, where you lived where you worked, and your quality of life was not. It was almost secondary.
Yeah.
Because you were where you needed to be, and you wanted to be relatively close to work and all that kind of stuff. But now things are changing so dramatically, even as far as traffic patterns and that kind of thing. And do you find that that's becomes a major issue for people?
Yeah. So we talked about those top factors that people consider when looking at places, and some of the other ones we see near the top. So we talked about safety a good bit already. That's definitely one. How easy is it to get around is another one, because yes, everybody hates traffic. And same as we said, there's no utopian community with no crime. I also don't think there's a utopian community with no traffic backup ever in any part of town. But we all hate it, right? Like universally, we hate just like sitting in traffic. And so I think that's definitely something people look at. And I think it's definitely true that in a smaller or more medium-sized city, you either have a little bit less of that, or you have more options in terms of being able to live a little bit closer to the things that you do. And, that can cut back on just, time spent in the car or commuting. But it's definitely interesting. And when you think too about, we talked about, some of the housing issues going on as a country. And that's part of it too, is like sometimes people are having to move further and further away from city centers to be able to afford anything, right? But then are you commuting an hour into work every day, which I don't think that's anybody's dream life, right? And so just thinking through all of those factors and, going back to remote work, or even just, hybrid work of like, I don't mind doing that commute sometimes, but every day is a lot. And yeah, just as we've hit a few times, that balance between figuring all that out and your quality of life. And I do think we've moved into maybe a place where people are thinking about both of those things a little bit more. So life's about more than work, right? We weren't just born to pay bills and die. So everyone's trying to balance, things they actually enjoy and want with obviously making a living.
Well, and there really is, and we need to take our halftime break, but there really is a change in that, because when I was a little kid, my dad, he went to work and then he expected to work 30 years and then retire and then die after playing golf for a couple of years. And that sadly is pretty much exactly what happened. But times have changed, and young people, and when I say young people, that means anybody under 50. So they're changing, and they want a quality of life, and they want to be able to live fully. When we come back, I'm going to tell you the story of my son, which is almost horrific in the amount of travel that he has to do just to get to work. We're again talking with Amanda Ellis. Go to livability.com. They've got the top 100 places to live in the United States. They've even got a map, and they've got a bunch of filters so that you can decide based upon what criteria you want to move to a place. So it really is a great website, and you guys have worked very hard on it. And it's very helpful to anybody that is contemplating a move, or if you are getting downsized, like is happening in the federal government, and you can't live where you lived because it's too expensive now. This can help you find a better place and a better way to be. Again, we're talking with Amanda Ellis, and we will be right back in a minute and 10 seconds. Don't go away, anybody.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We got a great show for you today, because livability, affordability, and all that stuff go hand in hand. Educational ability and stuff. And we've got a great website. And Amanda Ellis is with us, and she operates livability.com. And I want to ask you this question because it's near and dear to my heart. My son had a little bit of money, and so he wanted to put a down payment on a house. And he couldn't find a house anywhere near the city, anywhere near the suburbs of the city that he could afford. So he ended up in Yelm, Washington. I don't know if you're familiar with Yelm, but that's like an hour and a half, 2 hours away south of Seattle. So the other day he called me, and it was 5:30 at night, and I said, hi, and he said, I'm driving. And I said, driving? And he said, yeah, I got off of work at 3, and it was now 5:30, and he was 2/3 of the way home. So it took him. You could get to Portland faster than you can get, or Beaverton, which is a great place to live, faster than you could get from where he works and where he lives. And that's happening more and more, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Just like we were saying, yeah, people are having to go further out from the things they do in order to get into a house that's affordable for them. And I think it's another way that remote work can be, or hybrid at least, can be a really good thing, of at least having to avoid doing that every single day, even if you still have to do it sometimes.
Yeah, and he's a diesel mechanic, so he's got to go to where the piece of equipment is. So he's kind of stuck. Fortunately, they pay him well. And by the way, do you know, Amanda, you are being heard in Kenya?
It's far away.
What? Well, yeah. And unfortunately, you don't rank any cities in Kenya. So I'm afraid Samweli, I don't know. Anyway, but I want to thank him for paying attention, and he's become a very good friend of the show. And I've got another question for you. What about the affordability of coastal cities versus inner country cities like the Midwest? I've heard rumors that the Midwest is kind of emptying out a little bit, and the affordability is better, but the job situations may not be perfect. Can you speak to that at all?
Such a push and pull with those factors, right? Because a lot of times where housing is a little bit cheaper, things are a little bit more affordable. There may not be as many options for jobs as some other hub cities. So I don't know if I would say emptying out. I think both the Midwest and the Southeast have had a lot of really good selling points for talent. But yeah, of course, everyone is balancing, like we've talked about, where they can live with where they can work. I will say we consistently have every region of the country represented on our top 100, which I always really like seeing, especially because of those affordability parameters that we do apply. And, obviously some regions are a little bit more like, California, the Northeast, a little bit less affordable than a lot of places in the Southeast and the Midwest, but we do see representation from every region. And I'll name off a couple of cities in the Northeast. We've got Clifton, New Jersey, Warwick, Rhode Island, Danbury, Connecticut, just to throw out a few. So we do see some representation from every region that fits our criteria of kind of having it all.
And even Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and Worcester, and of course your assistant is helping me there because there's no way that I could recall that all by myself. And well, thank you for
all 100 either. So
no, go ahead.
No, just that would take some memorization to get all 100 of the cities down pat. So I can't say I've done that either.
Well, but I got to tell you that the work that you're doing is so unique. I don't think there's any other website like this. It's called livability.com, where you can find the best place to live with a bunch of criteria. How many do you have that are doing statistics and putting this all together? It's got to be exhausting.
Yeah, we're not a huge team. We do work with a data consultant on Top 100 and some of our other data. They are Applied Geographic Solutions, work with a lot of different types of groups that need location data. So they're a great partner. But yes, our site is built out to be a pretty comprehensive US relocation resource. So even outside of our Top 100, which of course is featured really prominently on our homepage, we also have a page for every state, and then that's further broken down into every city with a population over 5,000, I believe, has their own page with at least, some have more content than others, but at least some basic kind of data components and just giving you an idea of what's available. We also have, the best places to live in each state articles, the best places to live in every region. Again, just decide to get people's, gears turning about some places that maybe they haven't thought about, or pointing them to a resource if there's a specific place that they've gotten a job offer or have family in or are interested in. So it is a very unique resource.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the types of cities that you have here. I got to ask you, have you ever lived in a town or a city that's got 90,000 people in it, and they may have like 5 street lights or something like that in the whole place? That would be a really different type of experience for me.
Yeah, it is. And so there is a range of experiences, of course, even in the population range that we look at. Like a city of 100,000 is quite a bit different than a city of 450. So there's some variance there, but also some variance, again, for people to choose their preferences within that.
So I gotta ask you, if you were planning a move and you wanted to find a great place, how would working with livability.com, where should you start?
Yes. So, of course, we think livability.com is a great place to start. Again,
It
to
is.
either go ahead and get some information about some places on your short list, or if there's a certain region or state you're looking at, to just be able to get some high level information about what some of those places might be so that you can do more research. I would also say, that there is a trend now where some communities actually are offering even like incentives or different types of programs to entice people a little bit more. So that might be something to look into depending on, what you're looking for and where you're open to going. But we've seen communities offer, even like cash incentives or money down for a house or land, just different things to try to entice people to come their way. And also, programming for new residents where maybe there's, someone who works at that Chamber of Commerce that you can get in touch with, or they can put you in touch with someone to just give you some, be a first friend, first contact, and give you some information on moving there. So as you sort of are identifying these cities, I would definitely be searching, town attraction resources in X city or whatever that looks like, and seeing what some of those are, because there are definitely communities out there that really, really care about building even those one-on-one relationships and trying to really bring people into the fold of their community.
Well, yeah, I assume that if you are a Chamber of Commerce and you wanted to build your population base, that reaching out to someone like livability.com would be the first place to go for them to say, hey, Amanda, have you thought about Billings, Montana? We're a great town and we're great. And then you do the research and they don't come up within the top 500. Because there are over 2,000 communities that you look at.
Yes.
Did you ever tell anybody, I would love to recommend you, but there's some things you're going to have to do to fix some stuff?
Yes. Again, though, there are good places that aren't necessarily getting recognized on our list, since it's a pretty exclusive list. And I think it all just depends on what, your individual priorities are. Like something that might turn someone off of one place might be a great fit for another person. So I think it's really just kind of, it goes back to knowing yourself and what you're looking for.
And also, I would imagine, depending upon the age of your kids, and what they, if you have children that are involved in that, what the education is like, what's the opportunities for sports involvement and recreational activities and all that kind of stuff. That has a big, because I have a niece and a nephew, and all they do is drive in their car to soccer practice or baseball practice or soccer games and baseball games and stuff like that, but they have it available to them. Is that kind of an important thing for people to be able to tap into?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely somewhat different priorities in families that have kids versus ones that don't, right? So looking at that part is definitely a piece of it. And I will say too, our amenities category is pretty comprehensive in terms of things to do in a community. So it's, I mean, everything from like antiquing, arts organizations, zoos, wineries and breweries, music, dining variety, like pretty much anything that you could want is looked at in some way in that category.
What the brewery and distillery section would be of particular interest to me, and because
Yes. Yes. And what we're really looking for with that is a good variety of things, right? So like even though, beaches and skiing are included, we're not like penalizing a place for not having those things, but looking for a good variety of a lot of things to do and that would meet a lot of different interests.
well, and I assume that even in the Midwest, that there are places where and cities that have got great pools and stuff like that, and or there's local lakes like in Michigan, the land of 1,000 lakes. That there are lots of places to go camping and to do stuff like that as well. I wanted to ask you because you've also joined the podcasting ranks, haven't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of us now. We're all podcasters.
Only about 500,000 of us, and but you know what's interesting about that? Well, so how long have you guys been doing your podcast, and who's it niched for?
Yeah, so we've been doing it about 3 years, and it is very specific audience. So it's called Inside America's Best Cities, and we interview leaders. So it's largely designed to be a resource for people who work in the economic development industry, people who work at chambers of commerce, people who it's part of their job to think about these talent attraction components that we've been talking about here. So it's a very specific audience, but it also I think is an interesting peek behind the curtain for anyone of how much intentional thought really goes into some of this stuff that you just would never think about if you haven't been engaged in those types of industries,
Oh yeah. So I got to ask you, what's your favorite city?
That's not fair.
Well, I know.
Okay. So a lot of people, ask like, about so many places, like, have you moved because of this? Or like, would you? So my story is, so I talked a little bit about Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's where I'm based. And this is actually where I've lived most of my life. I personally have not done a lot of moving. My family's here and I like them enough that that's been a big part of keeping me around.
That's a big deal sometimes.
Yeah, some people are the opposite. But that's been a big part of it. And Chattanooga is really cool. Cool river city, lots of outdoor stuff to do, and just sort of that good, like medium size where, it's, just not too small, but not too big. And, we're 2 hours from Nashville, 2 hours from Atlanta. So if you want that bigger city vibe, you've got it. So I had to plug my own city and my own story with that. So if I were to move, I personally would probably want to stay within the Southeast, just being, still kind of close to my people. And we have a lot of great, places to pick from. I talked a little bit already about Cincinnati, but I thought that was a really cool place that I could maybe see myself spending some time. But yeah, there's so many options. It would be hard to choose, especially if you're just looking at, not where you're going for a job or not where family is, but just like, what do I think would be cool? And there's lots of cool places to pick from, which is a good problem.
And I have friends that live just north of Nashville, and they're a musical group and called Sisters J and stuff. And I now have to look at the weather report almost daily to see where unsettled weather is going to be and all that. Are you finding that is changing over time, and it's becoming more severe. Looking from the outside, it seems like it to me.
Yeah, it is. So we do have an environment category we look at for top 100, and that does take into account like natural disaster risk, as well as some other measures like air quality and population density and some things like that. But definitely, yes, seeing a little bit more volatility there with both weather and with climate change. I know one interesting way that I've heard some other thought leaders in our space look at this is that, so if you think about some of the hottest places for in-migration in the US lately have been like the Southeast, Tennessee, Texas, and Florida. Like we've all heard about, those places getting more popular. And the nice thing about them weather-wise is none of them get super cold, right? But it does get really hot. And as we see, climate change possibly progressing in the coming decades, we could see some of our, states that get a lot colder, even having more of an advantage from like a weather sort of climate haven standpoint, which I think is really fascinating. I know it's something, especially the state of Michigan is really looking at in terms of leaning into like clean energy jobs and kind of industry around that. So it'll be interesting to see how some of that plays out.
It really will, and the addition of AI is going to change a lot of stuff. And by the way, just as a public service announcement, if you decide that you want to look into coming to Seattle, don't. It rains here every day. It's cold. We have to wear parkas and gloves and stuff. It's okay. Traffic is terrible, and I don't want you to come here because traffic is terrible. In any event, we're talking with Amanda Ellis. Go to viability.com. Find out all about the 100 top cities in the United States where you can. And these are not big cities. These are between 50 and 500,000 people, so that you can actually have an imprint in your community and not be one of millions. We need to take our last break, and we'll be right back with Amanda, and we'll have her wrap up and tell us what wonderful things they've got planned for the future, and her website and the podcast and all that kind of good stuff. We'll be right back in 30 seconds, so shut up and don't go away.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We're talking with Amanda Ellis, and she operates a website, Livability.com. She doesn't do it alone. She's got a whole team of people that work with her and stuff. But I got to ask you, I was thinking about another list that you could do, and that would be professional sports teams, the best place to live and the worst place to live. And I can tell you that Seattle will be near the bottom.
I've never been to Seattle. You're not really selling it.
I know.
But again, you just have a car on the road, so.
Yeah, I'm not part of the Chamber of Commerce, and we've been to the only team. Well, we've had just a few championships, and one of the championships now is in a different state because they moved from Seattle to Oklahoma, and they're in the NBA Finals. Dang it. And in any event, Amanda Ellis, I really love the work that you're doing, and I love how it can positively impact somebody that doesn't know, because everybody's going to sell you something. Everybody's got a song they want to give you, but to get a real honest to goodness assessment of a particular place can be very, very helpful. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we always like to just really acknowledge the big difference it can make in people's lives, the right place, the right job opportunity. All of that can really make an impact.
Yeah. Now, do you think And I know this isn't your sphere necessarily, but do you think AI is going to make a big difference, or the lessening of fossil fuels and more clean technologies and stuff? Does that come into play in your work at all?
Don't know that it does in a huge way right now. I know that AI will probably definitely change and is shifting how people do research. And so, some of that, the AI responses it'll give you if you're asking it things obviously is derived from, what top ranking search results would be. But I think that's going to be something to look at, like for people that are marketing places, how to make sure that they're still getting their places in front of people when the ways people are looking for places could be shifting a little bit. So I think that's something to pay attention to, definitely. And I'm sure it'll have some impacts on the job market. I mean, there's a lot of different speculation about what exactly that will look like. And that, of course, will impact, relocation and talent attraction are also very tied to workforce trends and what's going on there. So, yeah, I think it is going to impact it. As far as exactly how, don't know that I have a concrete answer on that one.
Nobody does. But I will tell you this, because what AI does is it searches the internet for sites and places where they can find information about, and I would not be a bit surprised that you become a favorite site of the AI thing, because you've got significant information about all these places that you can live. I think it's great what you're doing, and congratulations. You've been doing this. The company's been around for 10 years. Do you anticipate, when you sit around your digital meetings, do you talk about what's next for you guys, what you're going to do, and how you're going to improve it or change it, or do other stuff to it?
Well, of course, that's what everybody, all employees worth their salt do, right? But I do think that this sort of information and thought process is going to become more and more important. And a big part of the reason why I think that is looking at some of the workforce and demographic challenges headed our way. It's going to create an environment where communities are having to compete with each other a little bit for talent and really, put in the work to be a place that people want to live and a place that people want to stay. And so I think the aspect of them being able to market themselves accordingly is going to be really key. And of course, we're engaging in both helping them do that and also helping people, find that best spot for them where they can really live their best life.
And the way that it's going lately, it may not, I don't know what that is. It may not be. There's a lot of people that right now have been downsized or have lost their jobs and stuff, and may not be able to live in the house or where they were because they can no longer afford it, and so they're looking for places that are more affordable and something where they can really, because it really is important to be the coach or to be a cub master or to be part of the community in a big way, and it's easier to do that in a smaller community, don't you think?
It is. I know we're almost at time, but that's something we didn't even get to touch on, was sort of some of those benefits of the mid-sized community and being able to more easily tap into social connections and connect with people in a different way is definitely one. I mean, big cities have their own, great parts, but people tend to be more transient versus like staying, being able to invest, being able to make an impact, and really build those relationships. And pretty much everything in life is about relationships. And to your point too, about people maybe being laid off, looking for that next step. I do think, we could see some moves happening from that. And I also think it's going to get some people interested in upskilling and reskilling into different types of careers and different types of roles. And so I think communities that are offering opportunities to do that, that's going to be interesting too, in terms of getting connected with talent.
And I think if you're listening to this and you're part of a community or you're the Chamber of Commerce, I would listen to what Amanda says, because it's in really, if you want to put your best foot out there and to get top talent, there's top talent out there right now. and getting it would be great. Amanda, thank you so much for being here. I really have appreciated having you here today.
We covered a lot, but it was fun.
Yes, indeed. You were on your toes. You did a really, really, really nice job.
Thank you. It's a good way to wrap up my week on a Friday afternoon.
Exactly. And your podcast again, if somebody wants to search it.
Inside America's Best Cities.
Inside America's Best Cities. Go to livability.com and find your livability best city. And Amanda, thank you for being here. I know you got to run, but I really appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much.
Have yourself an awesome weekend.
You too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.